All right, I'd like to welcome you all to this workshop, which is called How to Avoid Being a Mommy Martyr. For anybody who doesn't know anything about me, let me just flesh out a couple of details real quickly. I've been around in the movement since the early 1980s. That's when I started homeschooling my own children. I have 5 kids. They homeschooled all the way through up to the point of college entrance. They all have college degrees now. They're all adults, and 3 of them are married, have families of their own. One is engaged, and the other one is still happily single. But at any rate, we did a good job, I think. The relaxed homeschool approach that I believe in so strongly was totally adequate for preparing them for their adult lives. Back in the early days, I wrote a number of books. The one I'm best known for is this one called The Relaxed Homeschool. That led to the formation of our organization, which is known as the Association of Relaxed Christian Home Educators, aka Archers for the Lord Incorporated. Our website is www.archersforthelord.org. It is temporarily paused. It will be back up at this point. I'm recording this in the summer of 2023. It should be back up by the end of summer or early fall. In the meantime, I have a Facebook group called Relaxed Homeschooling with Mary Hood, and also a YouTube channel called Relaxed Homeschooling with Mary Hood also. If anybody's interested in any of those, you have to ask to join the Facebook group, but then if you click on media and files, there are a number of short videos on there. And basically what I'm doing right now, I went back, following the pandemic, we shut down our resource center, and I've just been doing a lot of Zoom classes for teenagers and learning all about this new format, doing things online, and also have done a few in-person courses in the area of North Georgia, just north of Atlanta, Ball Ground and Canton area. But I wanted to start helping out some of the new people again. And so one of the things I just did was re-listen to all of these CDs that I used to have called the Relaxed Homeschoolers Workshop. And they're really good. I hate to say that, but they are. They're things that you need to hear. But they need to be updated. They have a lot of cutesy family stories, which aren't appropriate at this point since my kids are older now. I have families of their own and careers and so forth. So I needed to redo it, and I'm going to be redoing it in a series of 9 Zoom workshops. So if you want more information on that, this was sort of an introductory one that I'm giving away for free, and I'll have it up on our YouTube channel soon. But the others will be paid workshops because Archers does need money, especially in the summer. So if you want to learn more about that, you can do that by going to our Facebook group, asking to join, and then clicking on files, and there'll be information in there on the workshops. I'll be doing them live this summer, and anybody who pays for them during the summer when we need our money worst, we'll get them for half price, which will be $25. So if you're interested in that, just know that there will be more when we get them up on the website and have our normal expenses again next fall. I also have recently written this, like at the beginning of the pandemic, 2020 or so, called The Relaxed Homeschooler Rides Again. Notice that on Relaxed Homeschool, I had this smoke thing. This book, The Relaxed Homeschool, was illustrated by my daughter Laura, who was then 7 years old. She is now a children's book illustrator, just finishing up a master's in children's book illustration in England. And so on this one, I did the same thing, only this time I had one of my local teenagers who was trying to start a photography and computer business. She photoshopped all that in, all right, and it's The Relaxed Homeschooler Rides Again. I recommend this one for new people who want to read more about my ideas because it's sort of designed for the new crowd. Among other things, it's available as an ebook or a paperback on Amazon. On the back, I photoshopped in this picture of me riding off into the sunset, which hopefully isn't quite true yet. I'm in my 70s now, but I'm by no means retired. And in fact, we're starting up an attempt as our organization to begin a rather massive project with a retreat, a sort of a full-service homeschooling and resource center and retreat center in the country somewhere near Atlanta. So if anybody wants to keep up on all that, you can also always email me at mary.e.hood@gmail.com. Now, as far as relaxed homeschooling goes, I've always said it's more of a mindset rather than a philosophy. It is not unschooling, which to me is a parental philosophy that stresses the use of real life experiences and minimizes the use of textbooks and so forth. Relaxed homeschooling is a mindset which can be your basis no matter what you wind up using as curriculum. But I genuinely believe it's appropriate for everybody that homeschools because God made families, not schools. And so when you try too hard to duplicate a school-like environment in your home, it's like the old, don't put new wine into old wineskins thing. It just doesn't work that well, which is kind of something hard for some of you who have been in education to accomplish. You're going to want to bring in that school mindset. And so in the workshop series I'm doing, the first three are all about eliminating some of those assumptions, getting rid of your preconceived ideas of what education is, learning to set your own goals, and then using those to guide your instruction. The main tenets of relaxed homeschooling are you're a family, not a school. You're a father, not the dad. You are the dad, the father, the head of the household, but you're not the principal because it's not a homeschool. I say that to lift you up to your proper role, not to drag you down. Then you have the mother, who is a mom, but not a teacher. And that's mainly what we're going to talk about in this workshop. And then you have individual relationships with your children, not a classroom. And when you get that mindset right, it frees you up to not have to do everything exactly like a school would, to not have to have all your ducks in a row at the first of every September and so forth, and to let your own goals guide you. So that's what the relaxed homeschool approach is. It's what the workshop series is going to be about. And again, they will be available after the fact on our website starting this fall. But if anybody's interested in getting involved this summer, just contact me because I will be doing all of them live. All right, now, this particular workshop primarily is about getting the mom's role right. All right, our society tends to minimize the role of the mother. It's the mother is the person who cooks and cleans and, wipes up bottoms and, changes diapers and goes and takes the kids and drives them to other places where other people can do the important job of training and raising and educating your children. As a homeschooling mom, your role is much broader than that. And I mentioned in the first, tenets of relaxed homeschooling, you're a mom, not a teacher. But of course, we have many teacher-like roles that we work on. We may be sitting next to a child, listening to them read or reading to them. You will be going to the library, hopefully, possibly on field trips and so forth. You'll be learning math right along with the kids if you still have to work on it a little yourself. You'll be doing all kinds of things that look a little bit like a teacher. But my main point is you don't have to mutate somehow. Get up in the morning at 8 and be a mom, and somehow at 9 you're going to mutate into a teacher. No, this is all about doing the best possible job as a mom that you can, and that is all God expects of you. Remember, sometimes we go through tough times. Some of you have tough times continuously if you have some kind of chronic illness in the family or something. Otherwise, most of us will go through tough times occasionally, whether they're economic tough times where we just don't have the money to do certain things, or whether they're times of transition or times when maybe your elderly parents need extra help, or maybe they've passed away and you have to deal with all that. Maybe you're pregnant and you're sick all day long. I know I did much more TV watching when I was pregnant with one of my children than the others, because I was just sick as a dog all day long and there wasn't much else I could do. But at any rate, when we talk about goals, when you know what your own goals are, it's easier to get through those times because it's easier to see exactly what your priority ought to be, right? So you're a mom. You're not a teacher. You'll have lots of teachers' roles, but you don't turn into a teacher when you become a homeschooler. I think that's really, really important to understand. Right? Now, many people think the content of this workshop sounds a little selfish. They think, oh, I'm a mom. I can't buy new clothes for myself when we don't have enough food on the table. Of course, that might be true for a season, but you're always minimizing your own needs and feeling that somehow that's what I'm talking about, becoming a mommy martyr, where you're putting yourself on the shelf and doing everything for everybody else. The problem is you can't help others if you're in a place of being very helpless yourself. You've got to get this right. You've got to find a way to meet the most important of your own needs, or you're not going to be there for them. Many years ago, my youngest son, who's now in his 30s, wrote an article when he was very young called something about the Christmas tree bulb that wouldn't light. And it was the idea of a bulb that had burned out, and in it he said, how can I light the others when I'm burned out myself? It sounds like he wrote the thing for my workshop, but he didn't. It just happens to be a really good example. That comes also from a workshop I have used to do called Burned Out on versus On Fire. The idea of staying connected, staying centered in Jesus, knowing who you are, and being able to light up the rest of the people, which you cannot do if you're in a position where you're absolutely going nuts yourself for whatever reason. All right, there's two types of stress. One is when you're doing too much, and the other is when you're bored, basically. And so you have to find a way of getting the right balance and not being bored with your own life and feeling like you're leading an interesting life as a homeschooling mom. And you have to sort of find a way to minimize that stress. I always like the idea of concentric circles when I'm talking about people. We have our inner being. I'm the same person now in my 70s as I was when I was 10. Not a lot has changed. I've grown, I've developed, I've deepened my walk with Jesus. I've grown a lot, but I'm still basically the same person. I'm a nature girl. I'd rather be outside than inside. I have lots and lots of different interests. I've been accused many times of being a dabbler and doing lots of things not that well. And that's probably true, but God knows what he's doing. And he created me to learn a little bit about a lot of things so that I could be in the position now of directing and founding programs. Because if I'm going to have a program, I need to know a little art, so I know if I have a good art program. I need to know a little music, so I can recognize a good music teacher and so forth. I need to know about all the various things. I need to be a good writer myself and so forth. I have become over the years known as being a math teacher, to the point that some people think I have my PhD in math, which is laughable. It's in education. But when I was young, I was so bad at math that I had to learn it as an adult, and gradually got to the point where I became a very good teacher because I can spot those people that need help. And when they don't understand algebra, I get that. I see that in them, and I know how to bring it down to their level. Incidentally, fall of 2023, I am for the first time teaching Algebra 1 via Zoom, adding it to some of the other things I do because so many people have asked me to do that. Anyway, so what I'm talking about today is not about being selfish. It's about finding yourself and then being able to do things for other people. Going back to this idea of concentric circles, you're there in the middle. Your relationship with Jesus, if you're Christian, would be there in the middle. Your other ideas, if you're not, but it's who you are, and then from that, you have your relationship with your husband, your relationship with your children, your relationship with the outside world, including possibly a career or missions, things that you do and everything. But when you think of it as concentric circles, it all has to build on that inner being. All right, there's a man named Edwin Markham who wrote a poem that says, at the heart of the cyclone tearing the sky is a place of central calm. Jesus has many quotes of being saying, be still and know that I am God. He will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. That's a concept of a sailboat with the mast and the stays. And if you're stayed on something that works for you, which is certainly Jesus for me, and you're paying attention to that inner core of your own being, you're going to be able to minister to the other people around you, from your husband and your kids and other people in your life and so forth. One thing that I find is interesting is that when your children are young, they're really in one of those inner circles, if you will. All right. And then as they get older and leave, they kind of form their own circles, if you will. And they're now not in your inner circle, they're in your outer circles, which makes moms feel pretty bad sometimes. But if you understand, to me, I've always believed if I did a good job with something when I was doing it, I don't miss it as much when when it's over, so that I really milked my children's childhood. I was with them all the time. I homeschooled them. My career was built around homeschooling and helping other people and so forth. So it's not like I'm going now, oh man, I wish that I was back in those days. It's just the same thing like when I nursed my kids till they were, toddlers, and I did it 5 different kids. And so nowadays when I look at a mother nursing, I don't have that, oh, I wish I could do that again thing. I kind of used it up, So it's just really important to understand that you have to pay attention to your own needs first, and then you can do other people's needs. If not, what you wind is these balls all over the place, where you have your homeschooling ball, you have your career ball, you have your husband ball, you have your hobbies ball over here, and you're just kind of bouncing all over the place, and it just doesn't work. It drives you nuts. And believe me, when you're driven nuts, everybody else is. Now, often people ask me, what is the the main job of a homeschooling mom? And to me, that's simple and it's obvious. You are the emotional center of your family, period. Whatever else you do is gravy if you do that well. If you are calm, centered, know who you are, meeting your own needs and so forth, and you're there, and your husband comes in and he's in a tither of some kind, your kids come in, your teenagers are having drama situations in their lives, whatever's going on, if you keep cool, if you keep calm, if you keep centered, everything else will gradually, calm down again. But if they come in great moods and everything's good in their life, but some reason you're a little out of kilter, that eventually everybody else is going to be out of kilter too. So that again is why it's so important to meet your own needs, so you can be that steady rock, that emotional center of the family that keeps it all together. And by the way, that holds true your entire life as your kids get older and they move out and they have children. So you still are the rock that they keep coming home to, even if they do it less often than they used to. All right. Okay, now the last thing that I want to do is give you another list to overwhelm you. All right. But I am going to talk about some areas of needs that I think you need to pay attention to in your own life. What I want you to do is just listen with an open mind. And if one or two jump out at you and say, oh, that's something I need to work on, not to say that, oh, this entire list is something. Let me go make a list and make sure I work on each one of these days. That's nuts. Again, you can only do so much stuff before you start getting burned out yourself. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about is the importance of balance. All right. You can't have that emotional center if you're not in balance yourself. So many moms will say, okay, well, Johnny's got baseball this year and he's going to be going to Awana's on Wednesday nights. And so he's got just about the right level of activities for him. And little Susie is going to be in ballet and her sister Mary is going to be in softball. And we're all going to participate in theater and so forth. And then you go, oh, this is great. Everybody's in balance. All right. But what you're forgetting is you're the one taking them, driving them, often having to sit through the things, maybe getting involved in them, often doing it with a 2-year-old sitting in the car seat and so forth. You have to be in balance. When you plan out the school year, that has to be your focus. What can I accomplish? And to me, even though I've run lots of resource centers and had lots of outside classes offered to people, especially when your children are young, I really believe if you're going to be a relaxed home school, some of that should be at the home. When my kids were little, we pretty much were home every single morning. In one of my first workshops in the Relaxed Home Schooling Workshop Series, I'm going to be talking about having a flexible but kind of consistent schedule to your life. But you have to be in balance yourself. And if you're out of balance and so frazzled, like so many homeschooling moms are these days, also remember, a woman's life comes in stages. You don't have to do everything right now. You don't have to have that career right now unless it works out for you. You don't have to do all that mission stuff with the church. People are going to say, oh, you're just at home anyway. Will you do this? Will you do that? Will you do the other thing? And the answer is no. You just learn to say, no, I am at home with my children. And that's what's important to me. And that is your biggest mission field, especially when they're still young and you have a bunch of them at home. Things do change as they start getting older. And the last 3 workshops in this series are going to be about working with teenagers, including high schoolers, and figuring out what to do beyond high school and so forth. All right. Okay, so balance is the first thing. The second thing I want to mention are some of your physical needs. All right, to begin with, you've got to have some rest. You've got to have some sleep. You need to figure out whatever it takes to be sure you sleep. To me, one of the things is trying to be consistent. You know, at this point in my life, I try to get in bed at 10 o'clock every single night. I try to be up no later than 7. I want to be consistent. I see so many people my age just kind of, sitting up at midnight reading and then get up whenever they want to and so forth. And I think there's a lot of reasons why I still feel fairly youthful here in my 70s now, when a lot of people are either dead or in nursing homes. And one of them, I think, is that I'm pretty consistent about my lifestyle, and I try to get the same amount of rest. Now, what do you do when you have little babies and they're up all night crying and you're walking and all that sort of thing? Well, again, you have to figure out what works for you. After my first one, when I did a lot of that, I did a lot of sleeping together with them, especially if they were nursing with me and so forth. There used to be a book popular back then called The Family Bed, and we often would have kids crawling in with us and stuff. You obviously have to think about safety factors when you're talking about sleeping with an infant, but I slept with my little children too, and just put the bed on the floor and made sure that the baby was between me and a wall and not between me and my husband. Moms have a lot of instincts that's not going to allow you to do something in the middle of the night, but dads don't necessarily have that same level of instinct. So that's something you have to think about a little bit if you're going to be taking them to bed with you. But whatever it is, you've got to find a way to get sleep. And then every day, I believe in having a quiet time, an enforced quiet time, no matter how old your kids are. Now, a very small baby or toddler might need to be with you, especially if you don't have anybody older to watch them. And maybe they can be playing quietly with their Legos on the floor. Maybe the little one can be nursing or something. But somehow you have to find a time for quiet. And I recommend it be a full hour, sometime maybe after lunch. And the other kids can be in their rooms. They can be quiet. They can be playing quiet board games or something like that. But the biggest thing is, unless it's emergency, they're not allowed to disturb you. And then use the time to rest and recharge, whatever that is for you. If it's actual sleeping or it's having another quiet time or something for yourself, whatever it is, don't use it to vacuum and dust and, do all your chores and so forth. You need that rest, especially when you have young children. Now, the other thing, of course, has to do with nutrition. And I'm just not going to say a lot about that. A lot of you are already into that topic, but just understand that your children, of course, how they bounce off the walls if they have too much red, flavored things and too much sugar and all that sort of thing. And so just remember that what you put in your body affects you too. And think about if you're putting in too many sugary drinks, and you should replace that with some water. Or if you're too addicted to caffeine and that's constantly a problem for you, or if you're too into my personal nemesis is ice cream. All right. I love ice cream. So in the summer, I really have to watch it, or I put on a lot of chunky pounds in the summer because I just really like ice cream. So you have to just think about it. And again, don't necessarily deny yourself and go on one of these crazy diets where you're not eating anything. Just think about what you're putting in your body and watch the effects it has on you. Some people are allergic to certain things too. I'm pretty sure that I have some allergy towards chocolate. It doesn't stop me from eating chocolate, but it does stop me from eating tons of chocolate all at once because I know it might be bad for me. All right, I used to make my own bread from scratch, from grains. I believe that's a really good thing for your own nutrition if you have the time and the energy to do that. The Bible always talks about your daily bread, and that's bread that will go bad if you leave it for a couple of days. So the stuff you buy in the grocery store, even if it says whole wheat and something, it's got preservatives in it usually, and it's not really with that freshly cracked wheat kernel. So that's a really good thing to do if you want to do one thing to make sure your nutrition is a little better. And then lots of water. I learned that as a hiker. It's really important to drink plenty of water all day long. See, everywhere I go, I have a water bottle. All right, smart water bottle. Whether I'm hiking or whether I'm playing piano or whether I'm doing a workshop like this, there's always a water bottle within reach. And I sip on it all day long. And I think that's very important. Then we come to exercise. Again, I'm in my 70s. I still kayak. I still climb up mountains on the Appalachian Trail. I have a very full work schedule most days and so forth. And I really believe one of the reasons I can do that is because I've done flexibility exercises every single morning of my life since I was about 15 years old, when I was introduced to it by a friend of mine. All right. And there are a variety of flexibility exercises I take from dance and from other things. But I do them every morning. And the key is building that habit. This is such a habit of mine. I do not have to think about it. I do one or two things in the morning first. Then I come in, I do my flexibility exercises. I don't have to think about it. I do it every morning. If I'm in a hotel room, I do it. If I'm in camping, I sit outside my tent and I do it. It's that built into my routine, and it's that much of a habit. Now, I also intend to do maybe 3 to 4 aerobic exercise things a week. And I'm also doing this thing called 52 hikes in a year, where I'm trying to do at least one more strenuous hike each week. But that doesn't always happen. And why? Because I really haven't made it be a habit. It's what I do when I have time. And so when you have something like that, you'll do it sometimes, you won't do it others. And if you don't do it for a long enough time, you do what I did the other day, which I have one particular scale at the gym that I belong to, and I go to it every once in a while, about once a month. I don't want to drive myself crazy, thinking about weight all the time. But this last time I went, my goal was to lose 1 pound each summer month, and then I'd be right about where I wanted to be. Instead, I'd put on 3. So it's a good idea to check yourself out once in a while and make sure that you're headed in the right direction with that sort of thing too. And the last thing on the physical thing is the need to feel attractive. If you're constantly looking in the mirror and you haven't taken a bath yet, and you're wearing some frumpy clothes that you think has to be your homeschooling costume or something, it's okay to buy something new for yourself once in a while. That's not selfish. Again, if you're constantly doing it, maybe that is selfish. But to make sure that your hair is attractive, that you look in the mirror and feel good about yourself, because among other things, your looks will reflect on others too. If they see you as being somebody that they might want to emulate in lots of ways, it starts with the way you present yourself to the world, and that starts with your appearance. All right. So again, it's kind of important to think about what you look like and what you feel like and how you present yourself to the world. And if you're presenting yourself well, you may be a shining light to other people in terms of both possibility of homeschooling, or if you're involved in home businesses, or just if you're just trying to share with them your love of Jesus, whatever it is. It sort of starts with having a presentation. Everybody has a first impression of you, and that's just more important than most people give credit for. All right, now on to the things that some of you will think are more important, beginning with spiritual needs. I mentioned already, every morning I have a quiet time. I read the Bible. I read inspirational literature. What I definitely don't do is start out the day with news reports. I don't start out the day with Facebook. I don't start out the day with CNN or Fox or anything like that. I especially don't go to Facebook, because I know there'll be people, blah, 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 the world's about to end, and all that sort of thing. There may be a time for catching up on what's going on and being aware of it. I'm a believer in being aware of what's going on in the world, but it's not when you're getting up in the morning. You have to set the tone for the day, and you do that with inspirational stuff. I still like the Norman Vincent Peale books that my mother used to use and read a lot when I was a young child. So all about the power of positive thinking from a Christian standpoint, and there are lots of other things too. Sometimes I read things. I'm also involved in a travel business. Sometimes I'll read business type books and things like that. But whatever it is, it's got to be inspirational. All right. And every book that says it's an inspirational book is not. One book I'm reading right now, I'm reading with a pen in my hand, and I have to constantly cross off all the swear words. I think I'm going to write a book called Success Without Swearing, and so that book is one that I've taken off my morning shelf, and I still read it some other time. But I want to start the day with inspirational reading, Bible study. I believe in a lot of Bible memorization for myself and my children. I use the Story Bible by Pearl Buck, by the way, a lot with my own kids, and that we did that every morning at the breakfast table. I'll talk more about that when I talk about establishing a schedule. All right, but we always had some kind of Bible study for them also once we got going with our day. And just, as the Bible says, pray without ceasing. Make it a part of your normal life. Whatever it is, if you have needs, if you have money needs aren't being met. Read about George Miller and how he prayed in his needs for his orphanages over there, and that's Mueller, George Miller, if you're not familiar with him. So just make sure you're praying about everything, whether it's physical needs, issues with your own children, with your relationship with your husband, whatever. Just keep taking it to God over and over and over, and you're going to find that, over in the long run, things will usually work out. It won't always work out. It's not a perfect world. We all know that, but they'll work out more often than not if you're going to take it to God and talk to him about stuff. Then we come to mental needs. It's important to keep yourself sharp mentally. I mentioned the one reason I think I'm doing pretty well in my mid-70s is the whole exercise, eat right type thing. But another big thing is that I keep myself young mentally. I'm always challenging myself, trying to learn new things. I've always liked foreign languages. And one year, I remember coming home from a curriculum fair with a whole bunch of Russian materials. Now, I have no idea why I wanted to learn Russian, and it didn't take. I worked on it for a few weeks and it didn't happen. But the point is, when I came in, my kids went, "We're learning Russian this year?" And I was actually surprised. Because no, I said, this is for me. All right. Now I've taught Spanish and French and other languages. And like I said, I'm very into and tend to be good at foreign languages. Russian, I kind of bombed out on it. I guess I didn't have a strong enough need. But notice that they caught some enthusiasm for learning, if you will, by my going off on something, even if it didn't really work in the long run. I talk in one of my workshops about 3 types of learning that really works well. None of which tend to be the ones emphasized in the public school system, unfortunately. But the first type is when you're intrinsically motivated in something yourself. The second is when you catch enthusiasm from other people. And that works well in a homeschool setting, and you're part of that, and your husband is part of that. So whatever you are intensely interested in yourself, the others will at least catch the vision, the idea of being enthusiastic learners, even if they don't necessarily wind up learning or studying the same thing you do. So, and by the way, the third type is when they set a goal and work hard towards it themselves because it's their goal. What people think they can do is the parents set the goals and then make the kids be enthusiastic learners, which can happen, but it happens less frequently if you try to do it that way. So the other 3 types of learning is a lot better if you can manage them to whatever extent. Now, remember that you are a part of this learning equation, and we learn. One of my other workshops, I think it's number 4 in the series, is called Reading and Writing the Natural Way. And we read because we love reading. We read to learn things. We read to grow. It's the same thing with learning. We do those reasons. We don't do it to get certain things on a transcript. We don't do it for grades. We don't do it for happy face stickers or anything else. And to me, that is part of establishing this thing called the lifestyle of learning that a number of homeschool authors besides me have spoken about. Marilyn Halshill is one of them. But this lifestyle of learning is everybody learning, everybody interested, everybody setting goals and so forth. I'm not saying there's never a time when you will set a goal and fill in a gap for kids. That certainly happens too. We'll talk about goal setting in one of those first 3 workshops. But at any rate, that's really important that you're part of this whole thing and keeping your sharp mentally. When people first start homeschooling, often the first thing they want to think about is, what curriculum will I use? All right. Or what homeschool guru am I going to follow? Am I going to be Charlotte Mason? Am I going to be this? I'm going to be that, whatever. But the more important thing is to think through your own goals and what you believe in all about learning and stuff, and to prepare yourself again for what may be coming. For example, a brand new homeschooler may need to educate themselves about children's literature by going to the library, talking to librarians. You may need to improve your own writing ability or something. I had a friend early in the movement who tried to write a newsletter, and she was really, really bad at it. But she worked and she worked and she worked and she worked, and she became a very good author over the course of time because it mattered to her. In the same way, you want to have a can-do attitude toward everything. You don't want to say, I can't do algebra. No, you absolutely can do algebra. Here's the thing, though. You can choose not to. I choose not to do biology and chemistry. I simply never have. I never will. I don't do those things, all right? So I have to find somebody else. A lot of people come to me for math because they simply don't want to do the math. But there's a big difference between I'm not going to, I don't want to, I choose not to, and I can't. All right. You've got to have this can-do attitude towards everything in your life, because again, that is a role model for your children, and you want them to develop a can-do attitude. Not everything, not all at once, things come slowly sometimes, but everybody can do virtually anything. There are a few exceptions here and there, but for the most part, that's a rule that I believe in strongly. All right. Next thing, social needs. All women need social and emotional support. All right. In an ideal world, that might come from your husband. Many of us have husbands that work or are quieter type men or whatever, and maybe are not always there for you emotionally. Whether they are or not, you need other women to support you emotionally. That doesn't have to be a homeschooling mom. It could be the older lady down the street who'd really like to get to know you and your kids and have tea together once or twice a week or something like that. All right. If you're going to get your support from homeschooling mothers, I want to talk a minute about what a support group really should be. A support group should be a place where older women are mentoring younger women, where everybody is there emotionally supporting each other. I used to go to do workshops in Florida years ago, and there was a group of about 6 moms that got together on one of those, the Florida, they have these lanai, these outdoor rooms. They had a swimming pool in there, and they'd get around there and they would laugh and talk until 3 o'clock in the morning. And I used to think, how wonderful, man, that's the kind of support we all need. And quite frankly, I didn't have that as much myself from homeschooling moms, partly because it was early in the movement. So I often had to find it other places like Leche League meetings or something else, or meeting people at the park, or getting involved in sports and getting some friends there or something. But if you're going to be in a homeschooling support group, make sure it's one that's really supportive. So many of them today are either all about activities for kids and just, again, running you ragged and maybe asking you to participate. Can you teach this? Can you do this? Because after all, you're just a homeschooling mom, you have nothing else to do. And then some homeschool support groups seem to have deteriorated into a place where bureaucracy reigns and there's a lot of requesting money and so forth. Now, when I was very young, this was many, many years ago, so I'm sure the people around are not around anymore, so I feel I can share this story, but I was involved in a support group that had become very bureaucratic. And we were supposed to turn in our dues or have a rather hefty fine tacked on. All right. And just when they were due, my father-in-law passed away. So I called them up and said, I know my dues are due today. I was going to send them in, but I said, I had a death in the family. When I get back, I'll get them to you. I really can't afford that extra fine, so I hope you'll understand. So when I got back, I sent them in. They returned my check, ripped up with no explanation. That is not support. All right, that is bureaucracy. And if you're in a support group, it's even remotely like that, get out of it and make one yourself if you have to. But you need to find a place where you're being supported by people who care about you. Keep in mind, I just said a death in the family. For all they knew, that could have been my husband or one of my kids. And yet they just let their bureaucracy drive them rather than, a heart for support for other women. So you need that support wherever you're going to get it. Hobbies, don't put everything off till some mythical time way off in the future when you're going to have more time. If you want to learn piano, set aside some time each day to do that yourself. You might have to do it with an appreciative toddler on your lap. You may want to start doing some artwork yourself or whatever it is. Or you may find that you're using this time to advance yourself towards some future career. When I was homeschooling, I was working one class at a time on my PhD. Wasn't even sure why at the time. I just felt that maybe it was needed for credibility. I was halfway there already, and I just felt I wanted to keep going after I became a homeschooler. But whatever reason, I didn't do it all the time. Now, they used to say to me, first they told me I wouldn't be accepted in the program because I had no public school experience to speak of, but I was. And then they told me that when it came time for the dissertation and the comps at the end, I would have to rent a room at the library and study for 8 hours a day. Well, clearly I couldn't do that. So I had to study while I was taking a bath, while I was doing my dishes and so forth. I know the main time I studied is I wandered around the botanical gardens by myself for 2 days before my comps, asking myself all the questions I thought that they might ask me and trying to answer them. And if I couldn't answer them, then I would go home and study that little bit. When it came time to do the dissertation, instead of finding some really involved, a study that I was going to do, I thought and thought and thought. I think I spent more time thinking than I did doing it. And I came up with a dissertation discussing the various influences on the homeschooling movement. So really, basically, for my dissertation, I read all the books that, of course, I enjoyed reading anyway, by Raymond Moore and John Holt, and, you know, all the different magazines coming into the movement at that time. If you're interested, that dissertation, which is called Contemporary Influences on the Homeschooling Movement, 1990, it is available through interlibrary loans somewhere or other still. It was from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And by the way, I took that information and also created a workshop I used to do when we were all much younger, called Countdown to Consistency. If anybody really wants that, I might be able to turn it up. I don't even know if I still have a copy of it, but I probably could find it if people really wanted to look at that. Okay, I think that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this workshop. Again, if you want more from me, join our Facebook group, Relaxed Homeschooling with Mary Hood. I'm going to be making this one available for free on our YouTube video. So if anybody's watching those also, you might want to join the Facebook group. And in the files, you'll have information on any classes I'm teaching or other things. In the media stuff, there's little thumbnails of me. And if you click on each one of them in the comments section, it says what the topic is. Those are mostly very short little videos, not anything like the big workshop I'm going to be doing. All right. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. My email, if you want to contact me, is mary.e.hood, H-O-O-D, @gmail.com. That's the E is for Ellen. Mary Ellen Watermelon, you know, when I was a kid. Anyway, I don't go by that anymore, but I do go by Mary Hood, and that is my email if you want to get in touch with me. Thanks very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed this. Bye-bye.